In May 1st of 2000, my father passed away. And it took away any reason I had to pretend like I was a normal person. I'd always been doing drugs. I started doing drugs when I was 12. Started drinking when I was 12. Never did it recreationally. I never did anything halfway. I did everything full tilt. But my dad had always given me that semblance of, you can, as long as you can, that's what he had always told me. My whole family has been alcoholics. My uncles, my dad, my mom, my aunts, most of them, my grandparents. They'd always said it was okay as long as you could get up and go to work in the morning. It was a normal thing. As long as you could get up and go to work in the morning, life was okay. And I had always done that because, I didn't ever want to let my dad down. So I always had a job. I always got up in the morning. I always went to work. Didn't matter how bad I felt. And I never crossed that line. I never crossed that line until after my dad passed away. When my dad passed away, I crossed that line where I went from doing it for fun and doing it just because that was my way of life to doing it because I had to. I crossed that line, and like I said, I don't do anything halfway. So I did it full tilt. I met a girl. I actually bought drugs from her. Thought I felt at the time I was madly in love with her. I didn't have anybody wise in my life to tell me you shouldn't marry your drug dealer, but I did. I married her. We had kids together. I found out that she had been using a needle even since before I met her. I caught her one day. I'd always told her, I always had this thing for people that use needles. I always said, I didn't want them around me. I didn't want them involved in my life. They're the lowest of the low, and I didn't want them anywhere around me. And I found out that she was doing it, and it kind of left me with a choice. I could either leave her or join her, and I decided to join her. And my life spiraled out of control quickly. It took about 7 years for me going from having a fairly decent, I wouldn't even say decent, a regular life. I was a construction worker, so for me to get loaded and drunk every day was a normal thing. It's kind of a lifestyle. But it got to where I couldn't go to work. I would spend 3 hours in the morning trying to get high. I would get up 3 hours before I had to be to work so that I would have time to try to get high before I could go to work. And if I couldn't get it to work out right, I wouldn't go. I just wouldn't call in. I wouldn't go. If I did show up, I might show up 2 or 3 hours late. When I did get to work, I would leave. I would just disappear from the job. I sold everything that I had, sold my vehicles, sold my tools. Basically, I felt like I had sold my soul. I gave up everything just to follow the drugs, follow the alcohol. I lost my kids. We had moved, my wife and me had moved into her father's closed down business. He had a business that had closed down and shut down, but he still had the building. I'd moved in there with my kids. It didn't have electricity. It did have running water, but it didn't have electricity. So I had rigged up some car batteries and some lights and a few other things so that we had a semblance of normalcy. I'd give my kids baths in a big plastic tub. I thought it was okay, Thought I was doing the right thing by them. My sister came by and asked if she could see the kids one day, and I said sure. She took them to McDonald's and never brought them back. I called her to find out where they were at. She told me that she wasn't bringing them back, that I wasn't a fit parent, that they needed a life and they weren't going to have it with me. Of course, I wasn't happy with that. I got angry. Next thing I know, the police are there, CPS, the Child Protective Services were there, telling me that, they'd taken away my parental rights. that I had a choice. I could either sign my parental rights over and my kids could go live with my sister, or they could be put in foster care. And if they were put in foster care, they would be separated. So I allowed them to go live with my sister. The deal was I wouldn't have any contact with them. You would think that would get me sober, but that didn't. That gave me an excuse to get worse, because I thought everything's over. Everything's over. I got no reason to live. Got nothing holding me back. So I went far off hook. I was really off the hook. I was angry. I was very angry. I was angry at my mom. I only have one sibling, and that's my sister. I was very angry with her. I thought she had betrayed me. I was hurt. I thought I was doing good by my kids. I look back now and I realize my sister really was, she loves me a lot. She took a lot in her hands. But, it didn't get me sober. It just made me worse. And I got bad. I got very violent. I got very angry. People didn't want to be around me. I got to where I couldn't keep a job. Didn't even want to keep a job. Didn't want to take care of myself. I started gaining a lot of weight. Got pretty sick. I woke up one day. And I realized I was homeless. I was living in a broken down motorhome in the back of my wife's parents' house. They wouldn't even let me in the house. They didn't mind if I stayed in the motorhome, but they didn't want me coming in their house. And it was way in the back. It was a motorhome that he bought just for the motor. The motorhome wasn't actually livable. It didn't have no doors or windows or anything inside of it. Actually, the feral cats from the neighborhood slept in it. It was kind of like the cat house. I woke up one morning and it was freezing cold outside. Had about 5 blankets on me. Had about 5 or 6 feral cats sleeping on top of me that didn't even like me. When you moved, they'd hiss at you. It was bad. I woke up and I realized, what am I doing? I had tried repeatedly for a little while in my own way to kill myself. I tried to OD. I didn't have the guts to shoot myself. I was afraid I would wound myself and still live. Yeah, I'd envisioned many things. I'd envisioned stepping out in front of cars, but I was always afraid that I would live. So I had tried repeatedly to OD. Couldn't make that work. It had gotten to where I needed drugs to do everything. I would take meth to go to bed. I would get high on meth so I could go to sleep. I would save enough so that when I woke up in the morning I could use meth to wake up. I wouldn't leave that trailer for anything. That's where my life had boiled down to, just being in that trailer, just by myself, waiting to die. And one day I woke up and realized, I want to do something different. And I made a decision. I made a decision. Pastor Rick always talks about, you got to make a decision. You gotta come to make a decision. And I made a decision. I want to try this soberly. I wanted to do something different. I wanted to get sober. I'd tried before. I always thought if I got sober just long enough to get a job, that things would change. If I got sober just long enough to get healthy, things would change. But this time I made up my mind I was going to get sober and stay sober. And I look back now, I tell the men in the program all the time now, I wish I had known something about recovery. I wish I had known something about this ranch. I knew a lot about getting high. I knew a lot about getting loaded. I didn't know anything about getting sober. Nothing. And I didn't have anybody in my life that wanted me to get sober. The only people involved in my life wanted me to stay right where I was at. It was very hard for me to get sober because I did it on the outside. I had people repeatedly knocking on my door all the time, would come to my door in the middle of the night wanting me to get high with them. They want you to stay in that place with them. Makes them feel good about where they're at. And I can't even tell you how many times I threw people off my property. Told them, go away, don't ever come back here, I don't want to see you anymore. You know, luckily, you know, with God's grace, you know, he brought me to a place where I ran into Pastor Randy, who had come through this program. I started coming out to this ranch. You know, I like to think that I got sober through this ranch in the installment plan. I started coming out here, coming and doing classes with Pastor Randy. I met Pastor Rick. I began a relationship with God that has just blossomed. Slowly, after a period of time, I started teaching a few classes out here. I started working out here, coming out here more often and more often. You know, people ask me all the time, how did you end up out here? You know, I really don't know. I know it was God's plan. In my heart, I really didn't want to have anything to do with anybody that was doing drugs or drinking. I had put that behind me. I didn't want anything to do with it. I was hoping to move into a life where all you did was hang around people that were sober and didn't have anything to do with any of that. But, you know, God puts you where he wants you. And I realized, you know, after 29 years of experimentation that I had a lot to offer. You know, I experimented, I did all the research in how to be a drug addict and an alcoholic. I can relate to these men. I've been down the roads they've been down. I know how hard it is to get sober. I know how worth it is. You know, I can't even begin to tell you the things God has blessed me with since I got sober. I got my kids back. You know, I don't have them back. They still live with my sister, but they just live a couple miles away. I see them several days a week. They spend the weekends with me and my wife. I can just say this, part of my testimony is this, is I didn't have my kids when they were babies. I did, but I was so loaded all the time that I was never there for them. And you know, nobody really knew how bad that I missed that. I missed being a dad to those little kids, and you know, God knew that. And God has blessed me with a new baby, you know, one that I didn't expect to have. You know, God had his plans and I had mine. He has just fulfilled everything I ever thought that I could have dreamed of having. I can't even tell you how thankful I am for this ranch. I can't tell you how thankful I am for Pastors Rick and Teresa. You know, I call Pastor Randy, you know, my dad, and they're like my grandparents. Pastor Randy, you know, if it wasn't for him, I don't think I would be sober. If it wasn't for him and God, you know, he taught me what he had learned here from Pastor Rick. And, you know, I just give it all to them and to God that I'm even here right now. I just have to say, you know, that I love you guys. That's what I want to say. And I'm so thankful that this place is here.